Hey guys, it's Maddie, and today I'll be sharing with you my worst books I read in 2016. So I do have my best books I read in 2016 up, so if you want to go watch that, definitely go give that a watch. It'll definitely be a more positive video than this one, I can assure you. So if you're into more positive kind of videos, go watch that one, but if you don't mind me talking a little negatively for once, then go ahead and keep watching this video. So for the most part, I read amazing books this year. There are very rarely any books that I don't like. That's why I only have 5 books on this list, because most of the times I will love a book. I don't hate books very often, or I don't dislike them very often, but there were a few books this year that I was either didn't like or that I was very disappointed by. And I also want to give a quick disclaimer. If I mention any of these books that you love, please don't take it personally. These are just my opinions. If you love the book, that is awesome. I'm glad someone enjoyed it. But these are just my own opinions, and I don't mean to offend anyone. I'm just sharing my thoughts on these books, and I'm sorry if I do come off offensive. But just know that I am not intentionally trying to offend anyone. First, I'm going to start off with some dishonorable mentions. These are books I put on the dishonorable mentions list, so it didn't quite make the official list, because these are books that I didn't end up finishing, so I didn't feel like I could officially say that I didn't like them because I didn't finish them. But I am still kind of disappointed by them, so I'm still going to mention them. They're just not on the official list. So my first dishonorable mention is The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I just was expecting a little more out of this book. I felt like I wasn't very interested in what was going on, which was the complete downfall of this book, because this is a thriller book, and I feel like going into a thriller book, you should really be interested in what is going on, because if you're not, then the book isn't going to be a very good experience for you if you don't care what is going to happen, especially in a thriller type of book. So I just found myself not really caring at all what was going to happen. But that being said, I feel like I'm gonna still give this book a try in the future, because I started this in the beginning of this month, which was December. I think I just really wasn't in the mood for it, so I will try to read it again in the future. And I think what I want to do is I want to watch the movie first before I read the book, which is unusual because I usually read the book first before I watch the movie, because I think this type of story would resonate better to me in a movie format. I feel like I might be more into the movie more, so I'm gonna watch the movie first and see if I still like it, then I'll give the book a try. But for now, I'm just putting this one off because I'm just not in the mood for it right now, but I think I will pick it up again sometime. And the next book I have on this list, which is another book I DNF'd, is The Love That Split the World, and I don't even remember who this is by. This book was just weird. That's basically why I dropped it. It had a lot to do with psychology stuff. And what I didn't really like about it is it had a whole bunch of genres mixed into it, which sometimes isn't bad, but this one just had too many genres and things going on mixed into it that it was confusing and just strange. And for the most part, I guess it just wasn't my cup of tea. Honestly, it just wasn't the kind of book I was interested in, and it is a contemporary book, so I should be interested in it because I love contemporary books, but this one was just odd, and I didn't understand it, and it was confusing, so I just DNF'd it, and yeah. Probably will never pick this one up again, though, because I just can't see myself ever getting into it. It just personally wasn't my kind of book, but I can see how other people would like it. It's just not for me. Okay, now I'm going into my official list. This is going to be a very negative video, I swear, but that's okay. Sometimes it's good to talk about things you don't like, especially when it comes to books, and share opinions. So with that being said, let's just get on to my official list. Oh, and by the way, I will be showing these books in order from my least most disliked book to my most disliked book. So this will be in order in the way I show them, to my least disliked and my most disliked of the year. So with that being said, let's just get started. Coming in at number 5, I have The Beginning of Everything. This one, I just expected more going into it. I felt like this was a very generic contemporary book that I've read so many times that just had so many tropes in it that I've seen before, and it just wasn't really anything special. It's not that I hated it. I gave it, I believe, a 3 out of 5 stars, so I thought it was okay, but it just wasn't anything special, and I was expecting like more out of it, and it just wasn't for me. I think the story was good. It has to do with a guy who used to be popular, but he gets into an accident and messes up his leg, and he's not very popular anymore, and him like finding this girl and falling in love. So I like the story, but it just was just an average story that you'd expect in a contemporary book that just wasn't anything different. So that's why I put it on this list. But at the same time, I will be willing to give Robin Schneider's other books a try. She does have one more book out there called Extraordinary Means, and it's like a cancer type of book. So I'll give that one a try, but this one I just wasn't that into, but I did think it was okay. The next book I have is Written in the Stars. I didn't like this one because I didn't like the way it was written. The way it was written was super weird. It was so blunt, and I feel like it glossed over so many scenes. Like, it quickly like go over a scene and it like summarize it and then go to the next scene, and there was just no detail in it. And I like my books to have a lot of detail so that I can like visualize it more, but this one just left all the details out, and I feel like I didn't really like most of the characters in it, and I couldn't connect with the relationships in it because they were already developed. So I didn't feel like any sympathy for what was going on with the main character. So because of that, this one was a huge disappointment. It has to do with the Pakistani culture and how arranged marriages work in this culture, and how this girl is getting into an arranged marriage that she doesn't want to get into, and she has a boyfriend, and she has to leave her boyfriend to go into this marriage, and it's like a whole mess. But because I just didn't really like the characters and I didn't like the writing style, I just didn't really like this book at all. The only good thing I can say about it is that it kept me interested a little bit because I was interested in learning about this culture, but other than that, I would not read it again, and I probably wouldn't recommend it because it just wasn't for me. The next book I have is a book that I just recently read like this week, and it turned out to be pretty disappointing, and that is Wake. This is a book that I've had on my TBR for so long, and I had been like really anticipating reading it finally because the concept sounded really cool. It has to do with a girl who can go into other people's dreams, and it's something she can't control, and she's had this curse all her life where she goes into all these people's dreams and she can talk to them in their dreams too. So it just sounded really cool, but when I actually read it, I was kind of just like disappointed. This is another case where I didn't like the writing style, and this writing style is what really made me not like the book, because this is another writing style that is very blunt. It's told in third person present, which I found that I'm not a big fan of that kind of point of view, honestly, because I find that it causes for a lot of blunt sentences, and it's a kind of writing style that doesn't make me feel like I'm connecting to the characters. Like, I literally could not connect to any of these characters in this book, and I felt like the romance in this book was thrown in there just for the sake of having a romance. Like, it wasn't very developed, and it just felt like it was just there and it had no purpose. And this is another book that jumps from scene to scene without giving too much detail. So it was the same kind of situation that I had with Written in the Stars. This one just lacked so much detail, and I just wasn't a fan of the writing style. But the good thing about this book though is that the ending to it left me interested a little bit, so I think I will give the sequel to it a try and see if I like it, and hopefully it'll be better than the first book, honestly. But I'm willing to give the rest of the series a try at least, and maybe the second book will be better, I don't know, but the first one just didn't hit the mark with me. So my number 2 and my number 1 books on this list are both books I put high up because they ended up disappointing me so bad. It's not that I hated these books, I just expected so much out of them, because these are books that are sequels to a series that I love, and they just let me down. So that is the case with these next two books. So coming in at number 2, literally it pains me to have to put this book on this list because I love the first book so much. And spoiler alert for my best of 2016, but the first book in this series made my number 1 spot on my best of 2016 list. So it just really hurts me to put its sequel up on here, but it just ended up really disappointing me. And that is Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard, which is the sequel to the Red Queen series. I've mentioned so many times how much I loved Red Queen. I mean, it made my number 1 spot for my favorite book I read in 2016, for crying out loud. But when I went into Glass Sword, I was expecting it just to be just as good as the first book, but it just, to me personally, it ended up not being as good. In fact, it kind of let me down, which is kind of an unpopular opinion because I've seen so many good reviews on Glass Sword and how everyone loved it just as much as the first one, but I just was expecting more out of it. It didn't give me that same feeling that I got with the first book. I wasn't really into the plot at all. I felt like there were some characters that were being introduced that didn't really serve a purpose at all, and I just wondered why they were there. And there were some plot points in this that I found useless. So I just wasn't a fan of the sequel, which really hurts me because I love the first book so much. And I'm hoping that the rest of this series will pick up and that it won't give me the same feeling I got with this book. I have high hopes that the third book, which comes out in 2 months, will be great. But this one, I just didn't like. But what I'm kind of hoping is, because I'm going to be rereading The Queen and this book in January, I'm hoping that my feelings for it will change. Like, maybe at the time I just wasn't really into it, but maybe when I reread it again, I'll be into it more. So I'm hoping that's what's going to happen. But for now, my feelings on it are just not very good. But hopefully, I'm just like hoping that when I reread it, I'll change my feelings on it, which I hope I do because I just love this series so much. And now we've made it to the book that I thought was the worst of 2016, and this is another case that just pains me because I love the first book in the series so much. And the second book was great too, but the third book was just a huge letdown. And that book is Lady Renegades, and this is the third and final book to the Rebel Belle series. I love Rebel Belle. I've mentioned Rebel Belle a lot on my channel because I love it so much, and I love the second book too, but the third book was just so disappointing. Just like, it makes me want to cry because it was so disappointing, and I was just expecting so much out of a final book in a series that I love, but this one was just weird, and I felt like the plot points in it were useless. And the number one thing that really disappointed me about it is the ending. The ending was so dissatisfying, and it gave me no closure, that I just expected so much more out of it. And I felt like this book was just thrown in there just for the sake of making it like a trilogy, because I found that some parts of this book were just so useless, and I felt like it just wasn't needed. And I have a feeling I didn't like this book so much is because it has the road trip trope in it. I don't even know if that's a trope, but the road trip plot point in it. And I find that I'm not a big fan of road trip books. I don't know why. They're just not very interesting to me. So that might have been why also that I didn't like this book so much. But the main thing that really let me down about it is the ending. I just wasn't satisfied with the ending. And it made me like really hope that Rachel Hawkins will come out with a fourth book possibly, just to clear up the ending more, because I hated the ending to this book. And I don't ever want to have that feeling with the final book in a series where I hated the ending and I felt like it was dissatisfying, because now I'm forever just going to be hung up on the series and how it could have ended better, because I just wasn't satisfied with this ending. So this book just really disappointed me so bad. And unfortunately, it just made my #1 list for my worst books that I read this year, because I just expected so much from this and it just let me down. So that is my list for my top 5 worst books I read in 2016. Again, I don't dislike books often. So that is why the number for this list is very small, thankfully. The majority of the books that I read in 2016 were amazing, and I'm hoping that maybe next year I'll have no books on this list for 2017. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope I didn't offend anyone too bad, honestly, but hopefully I don't, because I hate offending people, but these are just my opinions. If you guys liked the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more bookish related videos, and I'll be back